Yeah. Okay, good morning. This is 210 plus 4 voice, which if you haven't already discovered is pretty much 200, some at over 200. I don't give any takes over 200 words per minute, but we do drill-wise get up that fast. And we're going to start, in fact, with some 210, and this will be this is like 10 minutes of 210 for voice. And we have, I'm going to be plaintiff attorney, Mr. Lewis.
I am the witness.
I am attorney for defense 1, Mr. Kilda.
Attorney for defense 2, Mr. Rogers.
Judy, can you scooch a little closer to stay? Yep, perfect. Okay, we're going to start with a question by Mr. Kilda, and we're reading in 15s.
Okay, it's Mr. Kilda questioning for the record. Now, why don't you tell me, if you will, all the injuries that you claim you sustained as a result of the accident? You had 3 loosened teeth, is that right?
Yes.
We discussed those. What else?
I had, my gums were cut and bleeding, and I got scrapes. I scraped all the skin off my one cheekbone, and I had bruises and a broken wrist. My whole left side of me was bumped and scraped and bruised.
You had bruises where? In addition to your face and, I assume, your wrist?
All the way down my neck, through my shoulder, my hip, and my knees.
Anything else?
I took a real hard blow to the head, I know. It kind of knocked me silly for a few days.
Anything else?
I can't think of anything right at this time.
What did they do for you at Mercy San Juan?
They treated my arm.
And you've told us about that. That was a cast?
Yeah, it was a half cast. It wasn't a full cast.
Extending from where to where?
From my elbow clear down to my fingers.
Somebody at Mercy San Juan told you you had broken your left wrist?
To my knowledge, that night, that's what they told me.
How long was that cast done?
4 months approximately.
Now, after the accident, was the frequency with which you have had sexual relations with your husband changed in any way?
To some extent, yes.
How?
I was very emotional, and there were times when I just woke up very depressed and cried for no reason at all and just didn't want to be bothered, and I became withdrawn again.
For how long did that last?
To this day, there's times when this still affects me in that way.
How often would you have sexual relations with your husband on an average weekly basis during the year before the accident?
On an average, 3 times a week, maybe.
How about now?
Now?
Now.
I would say maybe once or twice.
Once or twice a week?
Yes.
That's because you are emotional because of the accident?
I have been through a lot of emotional stress in the last year, and it's affected me, I think, a great deal.
What emotional stress?
Ever since the accident, I just completely lost my confidence in myself, and I've had a hard time pulling myself back together as far as that goes.
Because of the injuries you sustained in this accident?
Yes.
In what ways have those injuries caused you to lose confidence in yourself?
Because it took me 28 years to finally gain that confidence, and all of a sudden it was just destroyed again.
Were you 28 years old at the time of the incident?
I was 28 years old when I got braces on my teeth, and after my braces were removed, finally for the first time in my life, I felt confidence in myself. And I came out of being a withdrawn person to a more confident person. And the day I fell and marked up my teeth and my face, it put me through such an emotional stress that to this day I'm still trying to pull myself back out of it again.
The braces were intended to straighten your teeth to correct an overbite?
Yes.
It was after you had your overbite corrected that you gained confidence?
Yes.
And it was because of the damage to your teeth that lost your confidence again?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, yes.
Have you ever received a psychiatric treatment?
No.
Have you received any marriage counseling?
No.
Have you thought about receiving professional help because of your apparent loss of confidence?
I considered it.
But you haven't done it?
No.
Why?
I haven't gotten the nerve to.
Other than your sexual relationship with your husband, has your relationship with your husband changed in any other degree that you feel is attributable to the injuries you sustained?
I think maybe we have gotten in a lot more arguments because of my attitude.
How often did you and your husband argue because of your attitude?
A few times a month at least. I mean, I'm talking about arguing, not just bickering. I'm talking about arguing.
How about before the accident?
Oh, it was sometimes, be 6 months in between, we'd have an argument.
Every 6 months?
No, don't answer that.
I'm not playing games here.
I think you are.
To me, that sounds like once every 6 months. If it's wrong, tell me.
It wasn't more often than 6 months. It was 6 months or more that we would go without arguing.
Has anybody suggested to you any other surgery other than the one we discussed with respect to your teeth, your tooth?
Dr. Core is the one who referred me to Dr. O'Neill because he's a specialist and he thought that it might be possible. So he wanted to get a second opinion from a specialist. So he referred me to Dr. O'Neill, and Dr. O'Neill told me that it would probably correct my problem if I had surgery.
I understand that. That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was whether anybody else had discussed with you the need for any surgery other than the one relating to your tooth
No.
or any other part of your body.
Oh, no.
Just trying to find out about further medical treatment down the road.
Not that I know of. For some strange reason, I remember them saying in the hospital
When?
the night of the accident, they said I might have to have plastic surgery done. But no doctor since then has suggested it because of the lump on my face.
Which is gone now?
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
Is there some possibility or likelihood you've been advised by a dentist you may have to have extractions in the future as a result of this?
They said a remote possibility. I may lose my tooth eventually. Even after they go through everything and try everything possible to save it, I still could possibly lose it.
That's all.
Then you'd have to have it replaced with another tooth, right? You wouldn't have a
Right.
big hole there, true?
Emotionally, I would.
Do you have questions?
Yeah, can we break for lunch?
I'd like to finish. You don't have a lot, I'm sure.
I may have a half hour's worth.
Look, can we go ahead and finish up?
Mrs. Patrick, my name's John Rogers. We represent Allstate Construction in this lawsuit. The same admonitions that Mr. Kilduff told you will apply to me too. I request you please wait until I finish my question before you answer it. If there is any question I ask you which is confusing to you or which you do not understand, stop me. I'll try to rephrase it till such time as you do understand it. I'd like to refer your attention to this exhibit. And could we have the original photograph?
Sure, if we can find it.
Exhibit number 1 he's talking about for the record.
That would be it. Sure looks like it.
Could we make a mark by the original to show it referring to exhibit number 1, X or something?
Why don't you put an exhibit 1 on the back of that?
Looking at the original of exhibit number 1, is that a fair and accurate depiction of how the accident site appeared on the morning of the accident?
Yes, it doesn't show the complete thing because, you know, it's not large enough to show where my car was parked and where the other car was parked.
Sure. I'm just referring to the area that the photograph does show. Is that particular area accurate as of the time of the accident?
Yes.
Now, of the 2 concrete bumpers that are depicted in that exhibit, was it the one closest to Auburn Boulevard that you tripped over?
Yes.
The pictures that,
Wait till the question is asked.
He's mean to you like he's mean to me.
All you do when you do that is produce more questions.
just trying to be cooperative.
You keep it up. We want to produce lots of questions.
Now, which portion of that bumper did you trip on?
Right out here at the end of this one right here.
Now, you are pointing to the far end. That would be the end close to
Closest to Auburn Boulevard.
Auburn Boulevard?
Yes.
That was the portion you tripped on? How would you describe the speed that you were traveling at the time that you tripped on the bumper? In other words, would you call it a brisk walk, slow jog, or some other way?
Very brisk walk.
That's the speed you were moving at the time,
Yeah.
prior to the time of the accident. Had you noticed the bumper that you tripped on?
Prior to the accident, I never seen that thing before.
Did you notice the other bumper, which is adjacent to it, but closer to the building?
I never noticed either one of them because I had never been in the parking lot before.
Was there a gas station adjacent to the Hideaway Bar during the night in question?
Is there a gas station?
Yes.
There's a gas station next door to the Hideaway, yes.
Is there illumination in that gas station?
I don't know if there is at that time of night.
On the night in question, did you notice any illumination from the gas station that extended to parking lot number 1?
At the time of the
I did not notice.
I said during the night in question.
10:30.
During the time,
I couldn't tell you, I really don't know.
apart from the lack of any light source, which you've already told us about at the time of the trip, was it dark out?
Yes, it was dark.
Was there a full moon?
Gee, I don't know, I couldn't tell you.
At the time of the fall, did headlights from passing motorists on Auburn Boulevard help you in any way to illuminate the parking lot too?
At that time of night, there is not too much traffic. I couldn't say whether there was a car going by at the time or not.
When the police came and spoke to you, that was the following morning, the same morning that the accident occurred?
They came over in the morning, my husband did.
Have you described to anyone since the accident occurred how the incident occurred?
No,
Was the primary reason you feel you've lost self-confidence because you don't feel you are as attractive now after the accident as you were before the accident?
a lot of reason, yes.
What was the route you took to negotiate to the Toyota from parking lot number 1?
I can't really remember exactly which direction I walked towards the car.
Referring your attention to exhibit number 1, would it have been between the cement bumper closest to the building and the building itself?
She said she didn't know, counsel.
I really can't remember which direction I went when I headed towards the Toyota. I only remember that I came back by way of walking behind the car and out in the parking lot this direction.
Did you engage in any sports activities prior to the time of the accident, which you have not been able to engage in since the accident?
I used to play volleyball.
Have you played since the accident?
No.
Is that because of your wrist?
Well, I can't, apply pressure to it.
How often on average did you play prior to the accident?
I didn't play that often, but my girlfriends and I used to get together at the park and play.
Once a month?
Maybe not even that often.
Once every couple months?
Yeah.
No further.
Okay, sorry, ladies, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I did get a message when you said that the sound was breaking up, that I had a poor internet connection, so hopefully that'll get better. Okay, we are going to do a little bit of this just to get some technical vocab in here. Oops, 2-3 copies. Maybe share from it.
Yes.
And this is, excuse me, technical cancer terminology, adenocarcinoma. I see written here on the front. We're going to be maybe getting to polychlorinated biphenyls, which are PCBs, electrophilic metabolites, cellular macromolecules, carcinogenesis. Sounds like fun. Epidemiology. Okay, as I said, we're just going to do a little bit. So I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Costello.
I am the witness.
Excuse me.
I am attorney for defense 1, Mr. Gibbs.
Attorney for defense 2, Mr. Moseri.
Mr. Costello begins, and we're going to read this in 16.
This one is.
I don't know, it doesn't matter. We're not going to be reading very much of it. So. Okay, on the record. Doctor, would you state your full name, please?
Noel Scott Weiss,
What is your address?
4434 137th Avenue, Northeast Bellevue.
How long have you lived in the state of Washington?
About 4.5 years, a little over 5 years.
Are you employed by the University of Washington?
That's correct.
In what capacity?
I'm an associate professor in the Department of Epidemiology in the School of Public Health and Community Medicine.
How long have you been employed at the University of Washington?
For the full time, I've lived in the state a little over 5 years.
Are you in the same department as Dr. Bricey?
No, we're in the same school. He's in the Department of Environmental Health.
I don't think he's a doctor.
It's Mr. Peter Bricey.
I should have said a professor. Are you an NG?
Yes,
Where did you take your undergraduate work?
I got an undergraduate degree from Stanford University.
Then where did you go to medical school?
Stanford also,
When did you graduate from Stanford?
1967.
That's medical school 67?
Yes,
Would you give us an outline of your training?
I got further training, specialized training after I left Stanford. In 1969, I got a Master of Public Health degree from the Harvard College of Public Health. In 1971, a Doctor of Public Health degree from the same institution. From 1971 to 73, I served with the National Center for Health Statistics as an epidemiologist. And since 1973, when I came to Seattle, I've worked both at the university and jointly at the Fred Hutchinson's Cancer Research Center.
You spend part of your time in each?
That's right.
How much time do you spend at the University of Washington?
That's hard to say exactly. I'd say about 60%, equal parts roughly.
What do you do at the University of Washington?
Well, associate professor subsumes it all, but the usual combination of research and teaching.
What kind of research are you involved in?
Primarily cancer research, epidemiology, meaning the study of the causes of disease and cancer, epidemiology being the study of the causes of cancer.
What's your particular interest in that field?
My particular interest is in the relationship of hormones, endocrine factors to cancer.
What direction is your research taking? What are you?
Well, the particular kinds of cancer I'm studying right now are mostly cancer in women, uterine, ovarian, large bowel cancer.
How long have you been actively involved in this research?
Oh, ever since I came to Seattle.
Does this take up most of your time?
I'd say somewhat more than half, and the remainder is teaching a little administrative work.
How do you go about your research on cancer and the hormone aspect of it?
Well, it's largely the same way an epidemiologist goes about studying cancer in any hormones or not. You've got several approaches available, but in the broadest sense, it's making observations on the population.
With statistics?
Yes, you try a systemic way to observe what's happened and attempt to make inferences from what you observe to what might be the factors that have pre-caused these cancers to develop.
Could you give us just a brief example of how this would work?
Sure, let me give you 2 examples if I might. Let's talk about cancer of the uterus, for example. One thing we do is check and see if the ratings of this disease might be changing over a period of time. This particular disease, they've changed quite a bit. Say they've doubled in the last decade. What they then do is try and determine what else we can see that has changed in the past decade that might relate to this sort of cancer. That's one particular piece of work that I did. An alternative approach might be to take women with this particular cancer and look into their past and see how they might differ from a group of women who don't get the cancer, again, with respect to things you think might be related. That's a general approach that's used.
Okay, do you have assistants that help you in gathering the statistics?
Oh, yeah.
I take it that part of your work would be supervising students or assistants who actually interview women?
That's correct.
How many interviews would be involved? Do you have any idea?
In the last several years, we've interviewed perhaps 2,000 women.
And then the other approach is, how do you get the statistics?
Right. When I first came in 1973, I was responsible for establishing something called the Cancer Surveillance System, which is a system whereby the cancer incidence in the western part of the state of Washington is determined. It's basically a matter of systemically going to hospitals and identifying patients who develop cancer and keeping track of it that way.
You mentioned when you or your associates interview women with uterus cancer, we'll say as compared to those that do not have uterus cancer, you check certain things in their background which you think might be a contributing factor. What kind of things?
Well, in this particular instance, the thing of particular interest is the prior use of estrogen-containing hormones.
DES?
That is one example, but even more commonly, these menopausal estrogens, Premarin, for example.
Why do you inquire about the estrogen use?
Okay, it's getting into the subject now, but basically you're interested in anything you think might stimulate the uterine tissue to grow, because that's the kind of thing you know, if anything's going to cause cancer, it might be something like that. Estrogens are hormones naturally produced and naturally do cause the uterine tissue to grow more rapidly. Therefore, it's the kind of thing that when taken externally, you're also interested in. The other main reason is I mentioned that if you look at things that are changing, possibly it's parallel to changing rates of disease, and estrogen preparations are being used much more now than they were 10 or 20 years ago.
Okay, so you asked this question because there is a suspicion at least that estrogen can contribute to uterus cancer.
That's right.
And that's based, I take it, on at least 2 things. Number 1, something that is used now that wasn't used 20 years ago. Number 2, that it can cause increase in uterus tissue.
Tissue growth, yes, not necessarily malignant growth, but right. I might add, you probably don't care, but as an aside, many of the questions we ask aren't nearly so well targeted as that one. We tend to ask questions about background information or to pick up clues than anything else. This particular question on estrogens is more focused than most.
Okay, have you done any research work within your specialty on polychlorinated biphenyls?
No, the only work I've done relating to occupational exposures was a recent study collaboratively with a graduate student on the study of boiler makers in Seattle and the possible relationship of that occupation exposure and cancer, but that's the closest my research has carried me.
What was the suspected cause, if that's a good word, in the boiler makers?
It was a very weak suspicion about possible welders within that union might have inhaled some of the materials, the metals that might have possibly led to lung cancer increase. But in general, it was more of sort of a checkout of the union to look for things rather than to test existing hypotheses of the materials of metal.
I take it then you haven't interviewed people with cancer who have a known exposure to PCBs.
That's correct.
How did you become aware of the case of Starbuck and Curtis?
I was contacted by Ms. Cochran for my opinion on the material.
Do you know how she got your name?
I think she mentioned she got it through Dr. William Johnson at the School of Public Health.
When were you first contacted?
I'd have to check, but I think it was in July of '78.
Your initial contact, I take it, was by telephone.
Yes,
Then was there a follow-up with correspondence?
yes,
Have you brought that correspondence with you today?
yes.
Could I see that first, please?
Sure, it's all here in one stage or another. Maybe the easiest way is if I just look at it and see what I think is important.
Okay,
Okay, I'm sorry, some of this material is really old, but the terminology is great. So, I'm sure you loved it. I'm gonna stop there. Page 2. I'll take those back, please. And next, we're gonna do some warm-up. That is the same transcript as the 200 12-minute tape will be. And today is a qualifier day. I forgot to send you guys a schedule of the qualifier dates. So just an FYI, I will be recording those. You won't be able to listen to those. So class will be a little shorter on those days. We'll probably end the recording at 10:35. But I also always include at least one 200 take prior to the qualifier. So we're going to do warm up from this, and we will go to page 72. I'm going to stop us at the bottom of page 72. Now let's do this in 15's the first time, and then maybe we'll repeat a bit of it faster. I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Talmadge.
I'm the witness, sorry.
I'm attorney for defense 1, Mr. McHugh.
I'm attorney for defense 2, Mr. Michaels.
Okay, we're going to start with Mr. Talmadge, and again, let's go 15s for a little bit, and then we'll repeat it on the record on the first page. Did you, pardon?
15?
Yeah. Did you ever do anything socially with Sandy Tigg?
We did when I went into the sales department later on.
At any point, did you and Tigg become friends?
Yes, we became good friends.
Can you think of any other things you and Sandy Tigg did socially?
He might have come to my open house when I bought my house in Santee when I was on the sales staff at Seiko.
Do you actually remember whether he was there or not?
I invited all the sales staff and the sales managers.
You are probably not going to like.
I know when else. He came to it was supposed to be my engagement party with my ex-husband, and I got engaged at Cross Creek Terrace when I first went back to work at Guardian Title. That would be in December of '81.
At any point in your life, have you and Sandy Tigg been what you would consider close friends?
One time I don't remember how it worked out, but I wrote him a letter of recommendation for a job he was offered by Chicago Title, and I helped him with that.
At any point in your life, have you and Sandy Tigg been what you would consider to be close friends?
How do you define close?
I am asking from you, your own perception. Did you feel you were close friends with Sandy Tigg at any time?
I think by all of the things I have already given, that would consider him, I guess, a close friend.
Okay, you are probably not going to like this next question. I want to know how close you were with him, Sandy Tigg. Did he and you ever have a physical or a sexual relation?
No, sir.
I am glad you find that amusing in any event.
I am sorry.
Were you close friends with Jan Newman?
No, sir.
If I remember your testimony of last time correctly, Tigg started working for Guardian Title around July '81. Is that about accurate according to your recollection?
I'm sorry. I don't remember the exact date.
I'm sorry, okay.
It's been a long time.
Just for your information, in his second amended complaint, which is, well,
Which he filed in his lawsuit, Tigg says on or about July 1 of '81, he and Guardian Title entered into an agreement where he was to work for defendant Guardian Title, that's the date he alleges anyway, that he started to work for Guardian Title. You were employed by Guardian Title in July 1, 1981, were you not?
Yes, sir.
What was your job at that time?
Sales manager.
Was it you who hired Tig?
Yes.
Can you tell me about the hiring process, how Tig's first contact with Guardian Title took place?
I am sorry, I don't remember.
Did you contact him?
I don't remember.
You don't recall that?
No, I am sorry.
Did you hire Sandy Tig?
Yes, sir.
When you hired Sandy Tig, did you meet with him before you hired him?
Gee, I think so.
You don't specifically recall that?
I normally talk to the people that I hire before I hire them.
Okay, let's go back and repeat that. Let's skip it a little bit. We're going to read them 14s now, so that'll be 210.
Starting the same place.
Yep, line 23 on the first page. Mr. Talmadge begins with the question on the record. Did you ever do anything socially with Sandy Tig?
We did when I went into the sales department later on.
At any point, did you and Tig become friends?
Yes, we became good friends.
Can you think of any other things you and Sandy Tig did socially?
He might have come to my open house when I bought my house in Santee when I was on the sales staff at Safeco.
Do you actually remember whether he was there or not?
I invited all the sales staff and the sales managers.
You're probably not going to lie.
I know when else. He came to it was supposed to be my engagement party when my ex-husband and I got engaged at Cross Creek Terrace when I first went back to work at Guardian Title. That would be in December of '81.
At any point in your life, have you and Sandy Tig been what you would consider close friends?
One time I don't remember how it worked out, but I wrote him a letter of recommendation for a job he was offered by Chicago Title, and I helped him with that.
At any point in your life, have you and Sandy Tig been what you would consider to be close friends?
How do you define close?
I am asking from you, your own perception. Did you feel you were close friends with Sandy Tig at any time?
I think by all the things I have already given, that would consider him, I guess, a close friend.
Okay, you are probably not going to like this next question. I want to know how close you were with him, Sandy Tig. Did he and you ever have a physical or sexual relation?
No, sir.
I am glad you find that amusing in any event.
I'm sorry.
Were you close friends with Jan Newman?
No, sir.
If I remember your testimony of last time correctly, Tig started working for Guardian Title around July of '81. Is that about accurate according to your recollection?
I am sorry. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Just for your information, in his second amended complaint, which he filed in his lawsuit, Tig says on or about July 1 of '81, he and Guardian Title entered into an agreement where he was to work for defendant Guardian Title. That's the date he alleges anyway that he started to work for Guardian Title. You were employed by Guardian Title in July 1, 1981, were you not?
Yes, sir.
What was your job at that time?
Sales manager.
Was it you who hired Tig?
Yes.
Can you tell me about the hiring process, how Tig's first contact with Guardian Title took place?
I'm sorry. I don't remember.
Did you contact him?
I don't remember.
You don't recall that?
No, I am sorry.
Did you hire Sandy Tig?
Yes, sir.
When you hired Sandy Tig, when did you meet with him before you hired him?
Gee, I think so.
You don't specifically recall that?
I normally talk to people that I hire before I hire them.
That you had known Sandy prior to hiring him in any event from your dealings at Safeco, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall Sandy Tig's employment with Guardian Title being terminated?
I remember Sandy was fired by Jean Diller.
Who was Jean Diller at the time she fired him? What was her title?
Jean was Guardian's regional sales manager.
She was your boss at that time?
Yes, sir.
What knowledge do you have of Jean Diller's termination of Sandy Tig?
The knowledge that I have about Sandy's termination was that Jean told me that she and Ed Barrett had discussed Sandy and that Sandy was too much trouble for Guardian, and in whatever her own words were, she tried to explain to me that you don't need this kind of employee working for you. He's too much trouble. My only recollection was that he wasn't too much trouble, that was their impression.
Did you tell that to Jean, that you felt he wasn't too much trouble?
Absolutely.
Did she explain to you what she meant, that he was too much trouble?
I think she told me that he was upsetting the flow of everything, but I don't have her exact words, but she sent me home from my office because she wanted to fire him.
She didn't want you there?
No, sir.
She told you to go home that day?
Yes.
Was it at your office that she told you she was going to fire Sandy Tig?
First, it was over the phone.
All right. What was the first contact you had with anyone at Guardian Title in which you learned that Sandy Tig was going to be terminated Was that a telephone conversation with Jean Diller?
I am sorry, what did you say?
I want to know about the first contact you had with anyone at Guardian Title with regarding the firing of Sandy Tigg. Was that in a phone conversation with Jean Diller?
No,
Do you understand my question?
I understand it now. I think my first hint that they desired to terminate Sandy was at a staff meeting, corporate staff meeting.
Who was in attendance at this corporate staff meeting?
That would be the Ed Barrett and all of the county managers and all of the county sales managers.
Do you remember who they were at the time?
I don't remember all of the names.
Do you remember any of the names?
Some.
Well, who do you remember?
Well, I know Jean Diller was there. I know Ed Barrett was there, myself, Helen Watson. The managers from the other counties, I don't remember their names.
Okay, I'm going to end this recording of practice and then I'll restart for the takes. Is the, you guys can respond by chat. Is the internet connection, is it a little bit better?